was traveling from Tuskegee, went on the shuttle, so the driver started talking to me. And so then he found out, he said, well, wait a minute, you're a minister? Who would allow you to be a minister? This just happened a couple of months ago. So I said, well, what do you mean by that? Well, he said, first of all, you're a woman. What religion is that they would let you be a minister? And then he said, your church must be black, because I don't know any churches. I'm Baptist, he said. And I know that, you wouldn't be ordained in my church. So I showed him love. This is frozen. Okay? So, with that said, I want you to, I'm just going to fast forward, because as a public theologian and as holistically, I'm called to use media to inspire people to be engaged in dialogue about differences. And so, as Jeremiah mentioned in my introduction, in the year 2006, I moved to Chicago thinking I'm entering a doctoral program to study how does the intersecting of media, xenophobia, austerity, racism, politics, and religion, how does that perpetuate oppression in the public square? Well, my second year, I was finishing up my coursework, and on March 14, 2008, at 8:30 a.m., I'll never forget this, another moment of combination of internalized oppression and disbelief. They're calling me to help them out. I received a call from Dr. Otis Moss III, who had replaced Dr. Jeremiah Wright as the pastor of Trinity United Church of Christ. And so they asked me to be the crisis communicator. So, the reality is, my beloved sisters and brothers, we're in this room because of faith, and some of us in the room believe and don't believe, but I've never encountered such nasty people. People who, because of internalized oppression, look like me. You all should not be a social justice church. God is upset with you. People who do not look like me. I was just sharing with Jim, I just had a phone call 2 weeks ago from a gentleman who told me he was a pastor of a church in Arkansas. And Trinity was in the name of the title of his church, and he was concerned because President Obama, he knows that President Obama's church doesn't believe in Holy Communion and in baptism. And he wanted to talk to somebody about that. How could we consider ourselves as being a church? I'm not making this up. So with that said, during many people call it a crisis, we really had to work together to really teach the people at Trinity and others who were in support with us how to hold on to our faith, because it was just a cacophony of a mixture of racism and Christianity, racism and religion. There was even a website created called Jesus Hates Obama. Has anyone ever seen that website? Now, this was a video that was created during that year by a group of conservative religious people who it was their goal to have this video that you're about to see played during the Super Bowl commercials. And we know how excited America gets for the Super Bowl commercials, right? These are the commercials everybody's waiting for. Well, this commercial was submitted to Fox Network for them to play during the Super Bowl. So can you play it, please? Listen to the music and pay attention to the images.
Get your stuff now at JesusHatesObama.com.
Thank you. Jesus hates. These are Christians who produced, many of them are Christians who worked on this commercial. And I would say this in front of them, which I've said, for the first time in my opinion, Fox Network made a right decision. They chose not to play this during the Super Bowl. Can you imagine what would have happened? I don't think anyone would have watched, everybody would not have watched the rest of that game. I don't think. Could be wrong. White equals European equals civilized equals rational, superior, free equals good, versus black equals African equals savage equals emotional equals inferior equals slave equals black. Now within the context of biblical scholarship, for those who do believe and who you read the Bible, is North America mentioned in the Bible? Is Great Britain mentioned in the Bible? Is Europe mentioned in the Bible? No. But guess where Jesus walked? Technically, he was on the continent of Africa. Now, many people think that the Middle East is not Africa. Well, when you go back and check the history books, you will find out that after World War II, the continent of Africa was separated, and from a geopolitical, they began to call it the Middle East. But technically, the Middle East is a part of Northern Africa. So Jesus actually walked on the continent of Africa. But yet, Jesus hates Obama. Trinity United Church of Christ. As Jeremiah stated in the introduction, because of the intersection of racism and Christianity, I mean, we have many bomb threats. We had to have security for those of us who worked at the church. We have, and we still do now, even our members, they cannot, if you bring a backpack in, our security is going to ask you to, they have to check it. Because we still, depending on the climate, oh my gosh, during the time of the discussion of, it is the Affordable Health Care Act, it's not Obamacare. But during that time, oh my goodness, we received tremendous amount of email and calls complaining to us about President Obama and the Affordable Health Care Act. People still, at times, protest out in front of Trinity United Church of Christ because of racism. And there is one famous preacher known as the street preacher. He's based in Florida. If you Google him, oftentimes he'll bring his group of people with him, and they'll stand out and walk up and down the church and say, in front of the church, and say that this is an abomination. These people do not believe in God. And that happens quite often. So we have to deal with the reality of the possibility that when people enter the church for the 7:30 service, there are 3 services, 7:30, 11 a.m., and the 6 p.m. on Sunday, or even during Bible study, we've had people show up to complain about how Trinity is not a true church. So but with that said, on April 4th, 2008, because literally, and if many of you are familiar with the practice in many predominantly African American churches, people who are in hospitals, hospice, or sick, we call it a sick and shut-in list. So it's listed in your bulletin, the address, the telephone number, so you can call and pray with people. We had to stop doing that because many members of the media, we had situations where they would go to the hospice, they would call people who were sick to try to get interviews with them. And then we also had people who, because at that time, in the bulletin, it was still up on the website, even people who said they were Christians would call and yell and scream at people who were sick. So that is why on April 4th, 2008, working together with a group of people, men, women from different faiths, different backgrounds, scholars, pastors, lay people, we invited them to come and stand with us in our pulpit to reclaim our sacred space, because the space was being invaded by ugliness and bitterness. We also had to really, especially with our young people, to teach them to believe in themselves and know that they too are sacred, even though this is in 2008. So, and that caused many of our young people and some of the adults, okay, well, what is religion? What is religion in America? And I ask you, what does it mean when our monetary exchange, even from a penny to the largest form of money in the United States, it reads, "In God we trust." But yet, many people who say that they're Christians or have a faith system, they do not like me because I'm a person of color, I'm a woman, or because I believe in womanist theology and black theology, meaning that I believe that all people are created equal. What does that mean for the United States of America? Think about it today. How many times, and it's starting again because we started with the primaries this past Tuesday. If you tuned in to any television station, any national news, or a national paper, read the newspaper, what was the discussion? It included, well, what are the conservative religious people thinking, and who's going to support